How's everybody doing today? It is Friday afternoon. You may notice I'm back in the studio. My extended vacation is finally over. I shouldn't say finally over. I had an awesome trip to the Jersey Shore with my family. The kids all had a blast. It was a really good time. It was a little hard to stay on top of the channel. I apologize for that. I appreciate you guys and your patience. But you know what? While I was out, it seems like the world went full socialism. See, this is why I can't take days off. See, I know we had this energy crisis going on, but I take a couple of days off. I'm quiet, I'm at the beach, I'm having fun. And all of a sudden, Europe decides they're going to nationalize their energy markets. They're going to start rationing. They're going to turn off people's heat when they're sleeping, turn off the hot water. Full on, full Venezuela. Europe has gone full Venezuela mode. See, this is why I can't take days off. See, that's it. It's my last time I ever take a day off. But you know what? Let's shrink my big, fat melon of a head. What's up, Mish? I got my man, Mish Damad, right here in the studio with me.
Hey, how's everybody doing today? So Jack comes back all tan, and someone left the manifesto at the G7 meeting for everybody to look through, and now everyone's going full socialism on us.
Well, I have a couple of things. I have my to-do list before vacation. Turn off the stove, make sure this was done, shock the pool, feed the chickens, make sure everything was taken care of, right? I forgot to put down hire somebody to sweep the European Parliament for the Communist Manifesto before every meeting. Right. Somehow a copy got through. Somebody was supposed to pick up the Communist Manifestos that were left behind.
We had the Wealth of Nations and the Communist Manifesto, and I think we switched them.
Yeah. I apologize. On behalf of the Western world, I apologize to everybody in Europe that I didn't make sure the Communist Manifestos were swept clear before your leaders gathered. Mm-hmm. But you know what? I'm sitting here mocking European leaders. And I'm looking at my screen right now, and who do I have? But I've got a Joe in headlights here. Speaking of leadership, or a total, absolute lack thereof. Folks, I have to play this both for the comedic value and at the same time to fully convey to you the sad state of affairs that has come.
Before you play it, though, I watched it live, and I did catch the words, but I want everybody to watch the background person on the right.
This guy right here, watch him. I'm not sure who this is. I should know who that is probably. He's obviously very important. He's standing next to Kamala behind Joe.
Yeah.
But listen to this, folks. Yes, you can write this stuff. This has been written before, but it was a joke. It was not meant as a preview. But I'll just play it.
That's what others are saying. You, the women of America, can determine the outcome of this issue. I don't think the court, or for that matter, the Republicans, power. It is noteworthy that the percentage of women who register to vote and cast a ballot is consistently higher than the percentage of the men who do so. End of quote. Repeat the line. Women are not.
Period. End of quote. Repeat the line. Thank you, President Burgundy.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Who put the question mark on that teleprompter? He will read every line you put up there.
I'm President Joe Biden.
I told you you could write this stuff. This has been written. Right? Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy came out years ago. Shout out to Joe Brown, by the way. I had thought of making this joke before Joe tweeted it out. Right? Me and Mish were sitting here brainstorming for this live stream. I was like, oh, I'm going to make a Ron Burgundy joke about this. And like 3 minutes later, Joe Brown tweets, I'm Ron Burgundy. Joe, you got me by a few minutes. Well played, Joe. Well played. I was talking to Joe, and he was always saying he wished he was funnier. Joe is a really funny guy.
No,
He's just got a very dry delivery.
Yeah.
Joe is really good. Sometimes he really makes me laugh. So, well played, Mr. Brown. Well played, President Burgundy. And, look, let's just be serious here. And I try not to get too political here. I try to steer clear of some controversial things. And, I catch myself getting increasingly political. I'm going to say something here that might upset a lot of people. But it's time. We have a 25th Amendment for a reason. The job is too important. All right? The man is clearly not in possession of his mental faculties. All right? Say what you want about the last guy to hold the office or the guy before that, right? Like all whataboutism aside, because honestly, whataboutism is intellectually lazy and we should not be engaging in that. Well, the last guy said this and did this. We're here and now, all right? This man is not mentally capable. He just isn't, all right? And he's got his finger on a button and he shouldn't. So I'm saying it right now, as much as it makes me feel dirty and I want to go take a shower, it's time to 25th Amendment him and put Kamala in there. And I am not an advocate of President Kamala. All right. Trust me, I am not her biggest fan. Not by any margin. All right. I understand what I'm saying when I say that. The job's just too important. All right. And, we are on the brink of a kinetic war. There is a war in Europe that is not going away anytime soon. Geopolitically, the situation is getting worse by the day. We had a political assassination in Japan today. God knows what's going on there. The job's just too important. And he's got to go. Joe, you got to go. All right? Thanks for coming out. Give him a trophy or just walk him into a room with some actors and tell him he's still got the job, because we don't need to destroy the man's confidence. I get a lot of people feel sorry for him, which is probably why he hasn't been 25th yet. But you know what? The president of the United States, that's not like the end of the game. It's time to make sure everybody has played. This is a little more important than that. So it's time. It's time for President Kamala.
So I do want to make the point here that, everyone that's been in chat with me for a while knows that I'm pretty tight on what we can and can't talk about. And I think this Article 25th discussion is becoming relevant enough to where it's not a conspiracy, if you will, or it doesn't bring high emotions anymore. I think even supporters are starting to discuss it. So
there are certain decisions that need to be made very quickly in the middle of the night that cannot happen without the president's go-ahead. And this man is not fully mentally capable of weighing the pros and cons of a decision like that, whether it be economic, military, geopolitical, what have you. All right, it's time. It's too important. All right, and that's where I'm going with this. All right, and that's like, as much as the Ron Burgundy jokes and everything, like, guys, who are we kidding? Who are we kidding? The guy's not there. It's time to move on. All right, I got a little too political there. I apologize, folks, if I ruffled anybody's feathers or triggered anybody's triggerings. Not my intention. And again, I typically steer away from politics, but that was too good to pass up. Let's take a walk.
Neil finally showed up, so that's cool.
Oh, hey, Neil. How you doing? Neil's usually quick on the draw, man. Somebody beat Neil here. It's usually a rare day. All right, the S&P 500 right now, we haven't even been through the indexes yet. The S&P is up 7 points, just barely positive for the day. It's been a bit of a bumpy day, sometimes up, sometimes down, but not really very much in either direction. Dow is up 68, or just under 0.25%. Again, same thing as the S&P, and the NASDAQ is up 21. So market really not sure what it wants to do today. Let's take a look at the commodity space, which has been a real mess lately. We have got gold up $2, still under 1,800. What a gift that is. Silver, likewise. Silver up a little bit today, but down below $20, $19. I don't want to give anything away, but I did an interview with Wall Street Silver a couple of days ago. I don't think it's aired yet. I've been away from the computer, but I think I gave Jim Lewis a heart attack in that interview. And somebody needs to check on Jim Lewis. Make sure he's still breathing, because I told him I'm not doing CPR on him. Sorry. I love you, Jim. You're awesome. Thanks for everything you've done for the channel. But I think silver, look, I think this big major sell-off really is only in the early innings still. I think we've still got a long, long way to go. I think the Fed has warned us that they're going to crash asset prices. They've told us that. And when somebody tells you, you should believe them the first time. And look, right now the Fed is in tightening mode, and they have said over and over again, we are fully committed, regardless of the pain, to fighting inflation. They're going to keep hiking. People are still talking about the Fed put. People are still talking about the pivot, saying, and we're kind of in this bad news is good news dichotomy again, where people, when we get bad economic news, the market rallies because people think the Fed is going to come to the rescue. It's not going to happen this time. I saw a good report on Substack from the last bear standing today. He's on Twitter. Highly recommend that Substack, by the way. He is awesome. He's done some really good stuff on Evergrande. And, he's one of those, there's only a few people that I can say this, but Last Bear Standing, he's one of those few Twitter handles that every time I see a tweet from him or her, whoever this individual is, I read it, everything. I can probably count on one hand the people that I read everything they tweet out.
He doesn't read everything I tweet out.
No, Mish. I just called you Mish now. No, yeah. Mish, you're not on that list. I read a lot of what you put out, but it's a short list of people that I read everything. If I'm scrolling through Twitter and I see them, I stop. And Last Bear Standing is one of them. And he did a whole big report today on how the Fed put is off the table right now. And a lot of people are starting to say they're going to pivot anytime soon. A lot of people whose opinions I respect, a lot of people who I watched regularly, people who I've had on this channel, they're saying that the pivot is coming. I think we're a long way from the pivot still. I would be surprised if we saw the pivot this calendar year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we're also seeing that there's a movement afoot. It was 4.8% last time I looked of 100% or of a 100-point raise in July. So they've blown off the 50. Yeah. They've gone to the 75 now and are going to the 100. So I agree with some of the people. People are putting their numbers in chat about where they think the silver is going to be. I'm a 12 handle. I think you're 11. A little different.
I said 11.
Okay.
I think silver will challenge the lows of the last panic sell-off, which we got during the pandemic.
I think physical is going to become very, very hard. I think we're going to have a $12 handle with a $25 premium.
Yeah, you won't be able to get silver for $11, but that will be the spot price.
Yes.
And
I think you're still going to be paying $30 for a peace dollar.
And let's just get into what's driving that. A lot of things. Number one, the margin calls. People will sell everything to stay afloat. So I think the good assets will be sold off in those margin calls when they start, and gold will go down with it. I also think the strong dollar. My God, the dollar has been on a tear lately. In the dollar milkshake theory, we're seeing this play out in real time right now. As global currencies go to hell in a handbasket, the dollar is getting stronger because the rest of the world is hiding in dollars, right? Think about people in Turkey. As the lira gets more and more worthless, the Turks are trading their lira for dollars to try to save some of their wealth. Even as the dollar is being inflated away, the lira is worse. And the same thing in Lebanon and the same thing in Japan.
Well, I was actually in Turkey back in 2000. I want to say might be 2002, fuzzy that long ago. But it was 1,000,000 lira to the dollar.
Wow.
And I would, you'd go to the ATM and you'd pull out $100, they'd give you $100 million lira. So it's funny money. But what we were doing, talking to the people, that they would rather us pay in dollars than lira. They did not want the lira.
Yep.
So, and this was only 20 years ago. They're going to remember this. So I think that's probably part of what we're seeing in Turkey. I do want to say that I think $8 is a little low, Allied, but you never know.
And the exchange rate, it's currency exchanges and things like that is probably one of my weaker areas. I try to be upfront with you guys about my limitations. Nobody special, no financial background in here. Coming up in the States, we don't deal with currency exchange that much because, when we come across foreign currency, we're like, oh, look, a Canadian penny in my change. Like, that's as much experience as the average American gets with the exchange rate is when someone accidentally slips a Canadian penny into their change. And then they're like, oh, I'm going to put this in my special coin shelf somewhere. Like, we just don't deal in it too much. Well, now this dollar is getting so strong. This is going to lead to big problems for our economy right now. And one of the problems we're seeing is it's killing commodity prices. Now, commodities are pretty mixed today. I'm seeing a lot of green here. But I think one of the big contributors to this absolute bloodbath in precious metals and in oil has been the strength of the dollar.
Yeah.
When the dollar goes up, things denominated in the dollar go down. And this is going to be really, really bad for U.S. exports. Put a pin in that. We'll circle back to that in a little bit because we're going to get into exports. And one company that I've been watching very closely that I don't have a position in, the foreign exchange is that one thing that I've been missing.
But it's not only the foreign exchange has been driving the RSI. I think on that one, I think we've discussed that. But that bigger news this morning, I think we're going to talk about here in a little bit. On that is the bigger news.
So let's just get into this European energy thing, right? So again, I come back from vacation and the world has gone full Venezuela. And I say Venezuela because Venezuela was once an incredibly prosperous country. I believe GDP-wise, they were the second biggest economy in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah. I
think they were bigger than Canada and Mexico. I mean, Venezuela was a prosperous nation with a lot of natural resources and a lot of wealth. And then the socialists took over and they nationalized everything. When you nationalize things, they stop working very well. And then that leads to price controls and shortages. And the next thing you know, this formerly prosperous country is dumpster diving, the whole country. That's where Europe is heading right now because Europe is gone full Venezuela. This article in the Financial Times today, we've got Germany dims the lights to cope with Russia gas supply crunch. I just did a video a couple of days ago about Uniper, the biggest gas utility in Germany. They're in line for a bailout asking the German government for a bailout. And here we go. Fears of winter energy crisis brings calls for shorter hot showers and cooler swimming pools.
So let me tell you a little story. We talked about 2000. I actually lived in Italy for 3 years, and Mike can tell me how wrong I am on this. But they would actually turn off our heat at night to save energy, and I think that rationing is about to come down again. And let's just kind of talk about what we're seeing in Europe right now. We have riots in Netherlands, Poland, Italy, and somewhere else. I can't remember the fourth one. I'm sure Chad will tell me. Then you have what's coming up. We're about to talk about the different companies that are going for bailouts with their hands out, and that is not good.
I did a video a couple of months ago. The language was a Lehman-like crisis in the video, and I called it the everything squeeze in that video, where it was warning after warning from banks and commodity traders saying that what was happening in commodities, and particularly energy, was going to lead to a banking crisis because all these utilities and these production companies in Europe, as part of daily basis, they're short these commodities. They sell them first and then they produce them. Well, now these prices are so high, these companies are all going belly up. And the only reason we have not had a short squeeze in all of these commodities right now is because central banks and the regular banks are extending credit, i.e., bailing them out so they have enough cash on hand to prevent the liquidations and the margin calls. That will only work so long. You cannot print natural gas. And so what are they doing to prevent that squeeze? They're implementing controls. They've got price controls, and now rationing is coming. I want to read a little bit here. Germany is rationing hot water, dimming its streetlights, and shutting down swimming pools as the impact of its energy crunch begins to spread from industry to offices, leisure centers, and homes. Now, Germany has price controls on power. When the fuel supply gets short in a free market, as the shortage develops, the prices would go up. Well, they have price controls on their power costs. The cost to utility payers is controlled by the government. And what do we say on this channel about price controls? They don't work. Price controls never work. They lead to shortages. So if you've got price controls and a shortage develops, you have one of two things you can change. You can get rid of your price controls and let the price rise to the point where you get demand destruction, or you can ration. And Europe has gone the route of the socialists. They have gone the route of Venezuela. They are nationalizing their utilities. The government is taking them over. Germany is bailing out Uniper, and we got France today. Let's bring this one up. France plans full nationalization of EDF, their biggest utility operator.
So now we have the two biggest European economies. France, close, got it. You have Germany and France nationalizing their utility companies. And when you sit there and start thinking about, we throw the words socialism and nationalization around a lot, but this is like legitimately socialistic controls, because once a government takes over the utility company, they can do whatever they want to the utilities. They can ration, they can set prices. So do you really think the government's going to sell it back? France is asking Goldman Sachs to come in and help them with the liquidity issue of it. So I think there's a lot more things going on here that push towards that socialistic idea, which Europe's always been a big on anyway. That's a pretty big push even for France.
So what happened with EDF, and this again, because EDF was already 85% owned by the French government. EDF is a wholesaler, and they sell their power to the smaller utilities. And when power prices started to rise earlier this year, the French government told EDF, you're not allowed to raise the prices you're charging these smaller companies. In other words, the French government bailed out the small utilities at the expense of the shareholders of the large utility. And you know what? Maybe you don't care about the shareholders of the large utility. Maybe, hey, people shouldn't have their power prices going up during the winter. I get that, right? But that doesn't eliminate the dynamics of supply demand, right? We're not dealing with this wonderful utopia where everybody shares. This is the real world, right? And when EDF was not allowed to raise their prices, EDF had to sell their power at a loss. They went hopelessly in debt, and now they can't maintain their operations, not without a government bailout.
And that comes down to future contracts, which is something we really don't have here. In Europe, they know a year in advance how much they're going to pay for gas. It's 347 euro per megawatt hour right now, which is ridiculously high.
Now, what do you hate more? Do you hate when your utility bill doubles, or do you hate when your house goes dark and your furnace stops working in February? Because during a time of a shortage, that's your choice. You have a choice between higher prices or rationing and shortages.
Right.
And Europe is going rationing and shortages. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Klaus Schwab will not turn down the heat on his swimming pool 1 freaking degree in February or January. I don't think Klaus Schwab's apartment or house or villa or whatever he lives in, his palace, is not going to go down to 62 degrees Fahrenheit at night when all the poors in the cities, when their power goes down. And this is, again, why I'm saying they're going full socialism here, because the people in power will be the last ones to make any of these sacrifices. They're going to go on TV and they're going to make all these speeches talking about shared sacrifice and it's a time of war and we all need to hunker down and make these sacrifices together. They will give up nothing, personally. Hugo Chavez was the wealthiest man in Venezuela for a reason. And this is why I'm saying they're going full Venezuela. What's going to happen is the government is going to run these utilities into the ground, and Europeans get ready, because blackouts, shortages, your businesses having to shut down, the government telling you your factory consumes too much electricity, we're shutting you down, but you still have to pay your employees somehow. That's what's coming, and that's what destroyed Venezuela from the inside out. Europe thinks they can do it differently right now. Real quick, I got to get into some, I got a super chat here from Mr. Mike Binder from Robin RC Models. Thank you, Mike. Also, a shout out to Mike. He sent me the links to the Uniper story via Twitter. And I meant to give you a shout out in that video, Mike. I apologize. I didn't get to it. But thanks again for that. And he says, it seems it's easier to believe in the Deus Ex Machina to miraculously solve the economic problems than using diplomacy to solve global issues. Mike, the premise of that comment is that they want to solve this problem also. I would throw another curve at you, and thank you very much for the super chat. I would submit that this is all by design. Haven't they been promising us for years that they are going to force us off of a carbon economy? Hasn't Klaus Schwab repeatedly said we are going to halt the oil and gas and coal exploration? Haven't the politicians, the ones who are in charge in most of these countries, haven't they been promising us that climate change was their biggest priority and that they were going to limit the use of fossil fuels? Isn't that exactly what they're doing? And I said earlier, when someone tells you what they're going to do, when they show you who they really are, believe them the first time. This is all by design. Look, these are the same people who are marching us off to war right now, using the war as the excuse to do what they've been promising us they are going to do for decades. I don't think this crisis is by accident. I really don't. I probably just got myself in trouble. Mish, are you going to throttle me back if I'm getting into the danger zone here?
2 more chats just came in.
And thanks again, Mike. I appreciate that. And I've got Mr. Miracle Oil. Jack, have you been tracking SPR level, more pain in oil? Yes, I do track SPR level more on a weekly basis. Mish is over here like I check. Mish just loves his data. Have you met Johnny Five, by the way? This guy craves input.
So it's funny when I call Jack. Sometimes he's like, "Am I talking to Johnny Five?" Because I'm just spitting numbers.
Input, more input. Yes, we do track the SPR, and what's going on. I mentioned earlier that the banks were subsidizing avoiding the margin calls, keeping the utilities afloat in Europe to prevent the short squeeze in the natural gas market. Well, I think the U.S. is doing the same thing with the SPR. We are subsidizing lower oil prices for a lot of people because we're releasing 1 million barrels a day from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. That's more than our market can consume. So now that extra oil that we're dumping into the market is being sold into other markets. And you know what that's doing? It's suppressing prices, but it's also killing the oil and gas explorers. You see, with these higher oil prices, right now, the exploration and production companies would be chomping at the bit to poke holes in the ground and go find more so they can sell it at these higher prices. But what they're doing, they're dumping their reserves. That's actually suppressing the prices. It's discouraging exploration and production, which means when they stop dumping these reserves, we'll be another year late poking holes in the ground looking for more. So when this stops, when they stop dumping this oil from the SPR, which is conveniently timed to the midterm elections.
It is.
boy, look out. That's all I'm saying. $200 oil is on the table when that happens. Abso-freaking-lutely.
So right now we have about 500-ish million barrels in the SPR. Half of that is good for gas. Half of that is good for products. So if you look at it, we only have about 250 million barrels of oil left to change the price. At the rate we're going right now, that's about 30 weeks because we've been burning about 8 million a week.
And keep in mind, the SPR level, that is an input to price because that is the cushion. And as that level gets lower, the price is going to climb because the market is going to see that level getting lower and say, Biden's running out of time. He can't do this forever.
Now, I think this has been happening with other commodities, and I keep sending Jack emails and stuff about the different commodities we're finding that are doing this. It's not only oil. There is actually a strategic reserve for grains. There is a 4 million metric ton trust fund for the United States. It's only cash. They do not keep grain right now. There's an act. I can go look it up if someone wants to hear the act. But we can store 25 billion bushels of grain in the United States. Right now, we're sitting about 3.
So again, the
Total.
reserves are being whittled away in favor of suppressing prices. Got to keep those inflation numbers low for somebody's poll numbers. But thank you, Miracle Oil. Yes, we are watching that SPR level. And in the short term, it means be really careful. If you're in the oil trade in the short term, watch out for those time trades, right? Your options, your futures contracts, because we don't know how long they're going to keep this up for. So probably not financial advisor, not financial advice. All that CY my A, probably shares are a better option right now because the shares are at a discount. And eventually, we don't know when, but eventually they're going to stop dumping the SPR. And when that happens, those shares are going to rocket higher. But in the meantime, if you're out on leverage or if you're on margin, they can keep this up for months. All right, so you can get stopped out. You'll run out of fuel long before the SPR does. So be careful with your leverage. That's something I've talked about a lot on this station.
Well, I think that go ahead and read the last one.
And I also got to say to my man Cheeseburger, and thank you, Miracle Oil. Thank you for the super chat and the support of the channel. And thank you, Matt, the Cheeseburger, for the support of the channel. He says, don't worry, this is all just transitory. Haven't heard that word in a while. It'll stop when we're all dead or in the gulags, LOL. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. But
Right.
guys like us need to be out of the way. If this wonderful world of own nothing and be happy needs to come to fruition, if they really want to make it happen, folks like us need to go away one way or another, and they need to get rid of us. So we can joke about it, but I'm not sure they're kidding.
No, I don't think they're kidding. So I think that kind of really goes into what we're talking about. Let's go ahead and talk about Cheniere.
Oh, yeah.
While we're here.
Oh, yeah. So what's going on here? We've got this mad dash for gas in Europe. Europe can't get any gas, so now they're going to price controls and rationing. Now,
hold on. When we talk about gas right now, we're talking about natural
Natural.
gas, not gasoline.
Yep, natural gas, which Europe's power grid is hopelessly dependent on because they've built nothing but windmills and solar panels for 20 years. And every time they promote windmills and solar panels, they're really promoting natural gas because windmills and solar panels only work about 20% of the time. So with the Russian gas being shut off or being severely curtailed, resulting from the unfortunate situation in Eastern Europe,
Well, we also have the Nord Stream 1 being turned off this weekend.
Yep, that's
Okay.
that's a whole other
Yeah.
a whole other thing. Well, American liquefied natural gas has been one of the bridges that we've been providing to Europe. We've been selling them our natural gas, which we have in spades here, and they've been buying it. It's been immensely profitable for companies like Cheniere Energy, which is one I don't currently have a position in. I've been telling you guys, I've been watching this one, and I've been wanting to get back into it because the macroeconomic situation is highly favorable, but the technicals have just looked so terrible on this one. And I got to send a shout out to Brian Zarb from thetechnicalchartist.com. Thank you, Brian, for looking at this one because I was kind of like doing a double take, trying to keep myself honest. And I sent Brian a message the other day, and I said, hey, Brian, like the macro for the LNG trade is so good right now for this company, but these technicals just look terrible. Can you look at this one for me? And he chimed in and said, yeah, this one looks terrible on the daily, weekly, monthly, everything. So I still have no position in this one. I've been talking about it for months. I sold it a few weeks ago. I haven't bought back in. And I mean, look, the momentum indicators, the RSI just down, down, lower highs, lower lows consistently. The MACD also lower highs, lower lows. The technicals just look terrible on this one. Can you guys see the chart? You can just barely see the chart. Let me make it a little more visible for you. Right? We had this double top a few months ago that I warned you guys about. I haven't been able to get back into this one, and I couldn't explain the technicals. The macro seems so good, and remember I told you Forex is one of those things that Americans just aren't used to. It doesn't enter our thought process, much like we only speak one language. We only deal in one currency. We just don't get exposed to other currencies and other languages that much. Well, the dollar, the Dixie, is the one thing I think that explains these technicals. And I know we have the other story we're going to get to in a second. But Schneider is an exporter, right? And the strong dollar is terrible for exports because it makes your product more expensive and therefore less competitive on the global market. So the strong dollar has really been a headwind for Schneider. And the last couple of days, this last week, the strong dollar is wreaking havoc in global trade right now. It's killing American exports. And this is the quintessential American export right now. So the strong dollar is one possible explanation for these god-awful technicals on this company. So I still, full disclosure, have no position in this company. Again, not a financial advisor, not financial advice. Do your own research, your own DD, arrive at a decision that's right for you based on your unique situation. But then we also got this little story today, exclusive in Reuters. Top U.S. LNG producer Schneider asks Biden admin to drop pollution rule. And I didn't even know this was out there.
Yeah.
I follow this company very closely, and I didn't even realize this was out there. This is dated today, and I want to read a little bit of this. Schneider Energy has asked the Biden administration to exempt it from limits on emissions of cancer-causing pollutants, arguing they would force the top U.S. exporter of LNG to shut for an extended period and endanger the country's efforts to ramp up supplies to Europe, according to documents reviewed by Reuters. The request imposes an uncomfortable dilemma on President Joe Biden's administration as it tries to balance efforts to slash pollution from the fossil fuel industry against promises to help European allies cut energy ties with Moscow over its invasion of Ukraine. Denying Schneider could reduce America's LNG exports for months or years, while granting its request would mean ongoing emissions of toxic pollutants into poor and minority neighborhoods, which Biden has vowed to protect. Now, I also want to mention down here, this is a new issue. At issue is a rule the U.S. Clean Air Act called the National Emission Standard for Hazardous Pollutants, which imposes curbs on emissions of known carcinogens like formaldehyde and benzene from stationary combustion turbines. The EPA announced in February that starting in August, the rule would apply to two types of gas-fired turbines that had been left out of the regulation for nearly 2 decades. So this type of turbine that Schneider uses at their Corpus Christi and Sabine Pass liquefaction facilities was exempt from the Clean Air Act, from these requirements, when the plants were built and for the first few years that these plants were running.
Hold on, let's not say Clean Air Act, because that is a Supreme Court thing, and that's a little bit different.
Well, the rule, the NESHAP emissions rule was under the Clean Air Act.
And I agree with what you're saying.
Not exempt from the whole Clean Air Act itself.
Yes.
Right. But these turbines were not subject to this rule. And then in February, the Biden administration, through the EPA, issued a statement that said, effective August, these turbines will be subject to that rule. So this was legal before February, and now as of August, it's going to be illegal, and it's going to shut down the largest natural gas export facility in the country.
Right.
Which Europe desperately needs. And I would also add that the Biden administration has told the Freeport LNG plant, which burned and exploded, that they can't restart for 90 to 120 days at least until they finish this root cause analysis on what caused the fire. So U.S. LNG exports, which are vital to the European energy security, this whole nationalization situation that's going on over there, the U.S. government is choking off LNG exports, cutting off even more of Europe's fuel supply at the most inopportune time. And this is a new thing. I want to make that clear. Like, I'm not sitting here advocating for polluting poor minority neighborhoods, all right? But you can't overlook the fact that it was previously legal, and then all of a sudden in February there's a rule change, and now it's illegal, and now the Europeans
Yeah. 6
have to
months
turn
later,
down their
we're
heat.
here.
So
The waiver is the big part. Are they going to waiver it? I don't think the EPA is. I don't think they care enough to do it because they have apoliticized themselves away from that so that they don't mind. The deep state doesn't mind if they cut off Europe's LNG. So I think we added up together, this is going to drop like 60% of our export capacity.
yeah, these two facilities are 50% of U.S. LNG exports. And keep in mind that I think it's 20% is already offline because of the Freeport plant. So this is a very big deal. And, you said you don't think they'll grant the waiver. I think they are politically incentivized not to grant the waiver, right? Because what does this do? This causes U.S. natural gas to build up here in our markets, driving domestic natural gas prices lower. Remember, politically, they need the inflation numbers to come down.
Now, if you watch natural gas in the United States, we're supposed to be banking at over 100 billion CF a week right now. We're at 60. So we are putting back anywhere from 40 to 50 billion cubic feet per week, less than we normally would.
So this would send an awful lot more into those tanks. And again, their promise has always been to put these producers out of business. They want the natural gas industry to go belly up. They don't want to deal with the fallout of the higher gas prices. They would love to blame this on the fossil fuel industry. And you know what else this looks like to me? This looks like backdoor export controls. Remember, I've been talking about how a lot of countries in the grain industry have been introducing export controls to try to suppress their domestic prices. Well, we can't really just come out and say export controls because we're, at least on paper, a free market economy here in the States. But we can use this backdoor sleight of hand BS to limit exports, which by default achieves the same effect. You get less gas exported. It builds up more here in the States. Domestic prices come down. Europe can freeze.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, I think people have to realize that as this commodity issue gets worse worldwide, that rich countries are going to start looking out for themselves. They're not going to sacrifice their rich people to help because they want to stay in power. And that is really what it's going to start coming down to.
Yep.
Yeah. So while we're here, being in power, Canada is missing like half of their internet right now?
Yeah, that's a little suspicious. I don't have the story brought up here, but we could bring that up real quick. What's going on in Canada, Mish?
Yeah, so there's a company out there called, I think it's Roger, is the internet company, and they went down and took down over 25% of Canada's internet capability, most of their phones, some 911, and a lot of ATMs and debit cards no longer work. And that's been going on now for 6 to 8 hours. So whatever it is, it's not small.
I'm trying to see if there's a how much of Canada's geographic or population this is affected. I don't see a lot of numbers in this story here. Yeah, widespread network outage from Rogers Communication left many Canadian customers without mobile and internet service Friday and caused problems for police, courthouses, passport offices, and other facilities. So, got a big internet outage going on in Canada right now.
So let's just review this week real quick. We had Boris Johnson has resigned. Horrible news last night. Abe was assassinated by a homemade weapon. And then now we have Canada going down on internet. And that's kind of all within 48 hours.
Energy rationing in Europe. Backdoor export controls in the States, not to mention President Ron Burgundy. Mm-hmm. Leadership makes a big difference.
It does.
Leadership does make a big difference. And we have just an absolute vacuum where leadership should be. Well, no, we have exactly who Klaus Schwab wants in charge in every corner of the Western world.
I agree.
I can't name a single leader in the West right now that does not have the nod from Mr. Schwab. Not the U.S., not Canada, not France, not Germany.
Not in the Western. I don't know who's going to replace Boris. I'll call him Boris now because he's not prime minister anymore.
Bojo.
Technically, but he's lame ducking it. I don't know who's going to replace him yet. Probably the defense minister, and he is very pro-Ukraine. But I think they'll keep sending money to Ukraine. And so let's talk about this grain thing since we're talking about Ukraine just a little. Turkey stopped a Russian boat about 4 days ago, that supposedly had Ukrainian grain in it, and then just let it go without unloading it or anything.
Yep.
So,
Ukraine had claimed that this ship was stolen grain from the Ukraine and that the Russians were exporting it. Turkey halted it and then said, nope, you're good. And Ukraine is over here saying, WTF, Turkey.
yeah,
What's going on? And you know what? With the weakness in wheat futures that we've seen over these last few months, I would not be surprised to learn that a lot of that Ukrainian grain that we thought was off the market has actually been getting exported.
yeah, it's been dumped on the market.
And again, who benefits, right? Because all of these leaders, right, they can all wear their little Ukrainian flag lapel pins and they can all put Stand With Ukraine in their Twitter profiles. But when it comes down to it, they need lower food prices within their own borders. Look at Sri Lanka, look at Ecuador, look at Libya, look at what's happening in so many countries around the world right now. High food prices is bad politics. So when those leaders are offered shipments of Russian grain that may or may not be of Ukrainian origin, will they turn it down?
No.
I don't think so. No, I don't think they would. Not if the mics were turned off and no cameras were pointed at them at that given moment. So I would not be the least bit surprised to learn a lot of this downward revision, right? There's some seasonality in this. Normally this time of year, we'd see a little bit of a decline in seasonality, but this much, where is all this wheat coming from?
Yeah, I mean, our inventory went down from about 1.1 billion to 580,000 metric tons. And then all of a sudden last week, we cut our exports by a third, down to a third. So from 330 metric tons of wheat to only 100.
And again, that's convenient if your goal politically is to suppress prices domestically, and you can't go with overt export controls. You have to be a little more sneaky to do it. We're getting into the realm of speculation here, but
sorry guys. Let's go ahead and look at it's 4 o'clock.
Oh, it's 4. 3:58. We got a few more minutes, but we have got the S&P is now negative for the day, down 2 points. The Dow also negative for the day, down 15. Looks like we're gonna close in the red for the day. Nasdaq struggling to a gain. That really that rubs me the wrong way when I see the Nasdaq outperforming the other indexes. It is clown world. Speaking of the Nasdaq, we've got we're a couple of weeks away from big tech earnings again, and it's been kind of, I don't want to say a quiet week, but there hasn't been, like, we haven't had those 1,000-point down or up days, right? We've had a couple 100-point up in here and there. Let me just read to you a couple of events that are coming up on the calendar right now. July 13th, that is next Wednesday, CPI. All right? We're probably going to see a lower CPI number, I think. Energy costs are down.
I missed on the unemployment numbers, but I'm kind of salty about it because if you look at the household numbers, I didn't miss. It was 3.74 was the household number. If you look at what the businesses said, they said 3.6. So there is a little bit of discrepancy there of about at least 0.2%.
Speaking of the jobs numbers, that's a big input to GDP because on July 28th, we've got GDP.
Yeah.
Oh, but wait. I went too far forward because starting 2 weeks out, the week of July 18th, we've got bank earnings start.
Yay,
I don't think the bank earnings are going to be that good. Mortgage issuance is way down. Home sales are way down.
Consumer credit just went down in May by $14 billion in 1 month.
So maybe there's hope for us. People are getting out of debt, thank God.
Or they've
defaulted on it.
No, they've reached their limit.
Oh, that's another possibility.
So people are maxing out the credit cards, I think, and now we're going to start seeing defaults.
So we've got bank earnings start the week of July 18th. July 25th through the 29th, that's big tech earnings. Speaking of the NASDAQ, right? Remember all the fireworks with Netflix and Amazon earnings last quarter? Oh, boy, that was a mess. Oh, and also during that same week, July 26th and 27th, we've got another Fed press conference. I think there's going to be a lot of live streams at the end of this month.
Yeah, a lot of going to be live almost constantly for a week, I think.
So we've got the next FOMC anticipated rate hike. It looks like 75 basis points is probably going to be it. And then a day later.
I'm going to go ahead and put in there. There is some 100 talk.
Yeah, there is. I don't think we'll get the 100 talk. Actually, I think after the CPI print next week, I think the 50 talk will come back.
You're right. It really depends. If it's flat or above, we'll talk 100. But if it's flat or below,
between the base effect and autos and what's happened in commodity prices over the last month.
Let's talk about this. Energy's down. Gas prices are down.
Yep.
What's the other big input?
All used and new cars.
Down.
Yep. Food.
It's the same
not
or up
as much.
Yeah.
Yep.
That pressure is still there, but it's not as bad.
Right.
So there is real opportunity here for that CPI to come down a little.
Or they could tell the truth about owner's equivalent rent, and there could be no change to CPI because you finally let a little bit of that truth in. Here's your opportunity, BLS.
Yeah.
I just throw them out there. And then that's all leading up to the GDP print on the 28th.
GDP.
Yeah. And by the way, we got another GDP now today. I did a video about how the Fed was talking about we're heading towards a recession. Well, the last couple of revisions of the GDP now, there have been two revisions in the last couple of days, and the GDP estimate for the second quarter has come up. It's still in negative territory. It is currently at negative 1.2% estimated economic growth for the second quarter.
That's quite the change. They changed it by negative, or they changed it by positive 0.7.
The jobs number today raised it up, and the trade balance information from yesterday brought it back up a little bit. Now, there are, I believe, two more revisions. I have the schedule of releases right here. There are three more revisions prior to the actual GDP number. We've got the retail sales and inventories number coming out on the 15th. We've got housing starts on the 19th, and then the 27th is their final estimate before the actual GDP number comes out on the 28th. So really, there's only two more revisions.
Right.
And at least the talking point is that this gets more accurate as time goes on.
So are we bracketing here? Because it went from negative 2.1 to negative 1.9 to negative 1.2. So is it in the middle, or is it going to keep climbing?
It's trending up right now. Right. Now, what do we have that's going to put it in? Retail sales. Retail sales, I think, will be abysmal.
Retail sales just
on the 15th. Retail sales and inventories. Industrial production, capacity utilization. Capacity utilization will be good. Production will be down. Import and export prices, strong dollar, bad for GDP. All right? Yeah. So I think that will probably not much change. If anything, it's going to make GDP worse. And then housing starts, oh no. Housing starts will make GDP worse. That's a year-over-year number.
Yeah. Oof.
So the remaining data points that are going to input the GDP will probably take us lower for the next 2 weeks. And then that's it. We get the actual number on the 28th. So, yeah,
so
it's recession.
We literally could be looking at a negative 2%.
Yeah, and the R word, we may get the official declaration of recession by the 28th of this month.
Now, they're going to tell us we're in a technical recession because we don't have three quarters in a row. They're just going to try and call it a technical recession. Yeah. They have to turn the economy around and make us positive in that last quarter. That's what they're going to try to say. They're going to try and say the Dixie's doing it, the oil exports, everything is kind of adding up. Well, kind of, yeah. And it's not going to fix itself. Yeah.
But this strong dollar is going to absolutely dash any hopes of improving the GDP numbers in the third quarter. This strong dollar, forget it. That's going to kill our exports. I got a couple of super chats here I didn't get to. Thank you, Mike Binder, again. He says, remember that WEF scenario where a cyber attack brought down French fintech networks? Trudeau and Schwab are buddies. That's interesting. Yeah. I don't have my alu hat, my tinfoil hat here. I need to get a hat that says tinfoil. Just a black baseball hat that says tinfoil across it. That's what I need to get. And I'm not mocking you, Mike. I think that is a entirely plausible scenario. We've heard about it. They were warning about it, much the same way they warned about pandemics, conveniently close to the pandemic. I'm going to stop. I'm going to get myself in trouble here. I'm going to get my channel shadow banned.
I think we're already crossed
But that's an interesting, we crossed that Rubicon way back, didn't we? But that is an interesting dotted line connection you made there. And, yeah, Trudeau is definitely a little Pinocchio, little puppet for Klaus Schwab. Justin Trudeau says, oh, boy, if I do what Klaus says, maybe he'll turn me into a real boy someday. That's my Justin Trudeau impression. How did I do? It was a little too masculine. I need to be a little more limp-wristed with my Trudeau, a little more articulate. He's very articulate.
He's very articulate when he talks. Yes.
I hate the way he overpronounces his T's. The National Emergency Measures Act. Act. Oh, God. There's so many things that man does that just propel me to unpleasant thoughts. But the way he says act, He just overpronounces. Guys, don't be that articulate. All right, use a little slang, roll your R, whatever. Like, it's just it doesn't look good. Not a good look for you. It's not a good look for you, Justin. Run that by your next focus group. All right, and Cheeseburger says, what's the ticker symbol for
Yeah, it's gonna
Hunter's supplier? I can't say that out loud, Cheeseburger. Seems like a safe hedge. Yeah. Oh. Did you bring your 10-foot pole today, Mish? Should I take out my 10-foot pole and bite on that one? Cheeseburger's poking me here.
Everybody. I was watching Biden's speech when he signed that executive order today, and everybody in the chat kept asking, "Where's Hunter? Where's Hunter?" We don't care about Hunter when we're talking about this kind of stuff because that is not going to affect us.
Yeah.
So that's my answer to that question.
But good luck with your art career, Hunter. I mean that with all sincerity.
Yeah.
I wonder if Masterworks will be featuring securitized ownership of Hunter Biden's artwork. I wonder how those would sell. That's a good test. I know Mish is like, Jack, don't go there. He's like, right? Masterworks, they like to securitize art. You can own a partial share of a work of art. Let's put one of Hunter's masterpieces on Masterworks and see what kind of rate the open market is willing to pay for that.
NFTs. I mean, they've hit some hard times here lately.
And then let's measure the delta between what the securitized market is willing to value Hunter's art at versus what maybe some of these Chinese diplomats are paying for Hunter's art. Maybe there's a delta there. I'd like, you know what? Rein me in, Mish. Rein me in.
Yeah, let's get off.
All right.
You just got off.
So, look, folks, I'm going to go long story short here. What Europe is doing right now with their energy markets is very dangerous for the European people. All right. Go back and look at how prosperous Venezuela was in the 1980s, and then how the slow march to socialism and nationalization and price controls and rationing just absolutely obliterated the infrastructure in Venezuela.
Devin, you brought up a good point. So ADP, there's two people that put up oil and gas inventories, and that is ADP and EIA. ADP is always a little bit off.
It was API, the American Petroleum Institute. ADP is the private payrolls number, right? Is he talking about the oil number or the payrolls number?
Yeah, which one are you talking about, Devin?
Is ADP halting too?
Look up ADP. I know API is going to halt for a month.
So the American Petroleum Institute, they give their estimates of oil inventories, right? And they announced that they're going to stop their data reporting. Remember the conveniently timed oil data before the 4th of July?
That was the one that went offline and they wouldn't do it for a while.
Is ADP halting too? I don't see anything about ADP halting here. He's probably thinking API.
Yeah, we'll go with API. So API is going to halt while they get their system up for 4 to 6 weeks. So basically, EIA did report, Rich. So, in fact, they reported today. So we have these two contrasting reports that one is based on flow and the other one's based on tank level. We're going to get rid of the flow one, which that doesn't help us, right? We need that flow one because that's the one that gives us how much stuff is going up and down.
So we're only going to be reporting the EIA, Energy Information Administration numbers, the government numbers. API, the American Petroleum Institute, which is a private organization, we won't be getting their numbers.
Now, remember, our friends in OPEC stopped using EIA because it was too inaccurate.
Yeah. And also OPEC, speaking of that, OPEC is having a heck of a time meeting their production targets.
They are.
Only 2 of all the OPEC plus countries actually met or beat their target for oil production last month.
Yeah, one was Gabon. Come on, man.
Gabon and UAE. Am I even saying it as a Gabon? Gabon?
I say Gabon.
Gabon. So Gabon and the UAE were the only OPEC countries that met production targets last month. So every time OPEC meets and they talk about a production increase, it's all talk. They can't do it. And we've been talking about that on this channel. These countries are tapped. They have been denied capital investment, and they have social unrest in their countries now. And the only reason, I suspect the only reason we're really getting these awful prices in oil lately is because we are dumping the equivalent of one of these medium-sized OPEC countries' oil output on the open market every day from the SPR. 1 million barrels a day matches the oil output from some of these mid-level members of OPEC. I think
Now someone just said something. The other death I've been thinking of that happened in the last 48 hours was the head of OPEC.
how did I miss that one? Wow. See, I can't go on vacation. I can't take vacations. No more vacations. Bad things happen when I go on vacation. I apologize,
Now, the head
folks.
of OPEC's not like the CEO and all this great power. He's a facilitator.
Yeah.
But he's still the facilitator, just passed away. So anytime you have a high-level person in a company, in a government, in an organization disappear without turnover, everything blows up that they're in charge with.
So, yeah, folks, what's going on in Europe right now, not good for Europeans. If you're in Europe, don't buy these silly talking points that these price controls and this rationing is good for you. They're going to tell you, they always tell you it's good for you. They always tell you it's for your own good. Even though the ones doing this, the ones making the decision, never, ever share in the sacrifice. It's always your sacrifice and their benefit. And remember, here's an idea. Let's get a webcam in real time pointed at Klaus Schwab's thermostat. Wherever Klaus Schwab goes, I want a picture of the thermostat. Let's see if Klaus Schwab enters one single room that is 1 single degree Fahrenheit, Celsius, wherever you are in the world, Kelvin, I don't care. If it's 1 degree colder, anywhere Klaus Schwab goes, while Europeans are freezing this winter. I'd like to see that. Somebody make that happen.
Right,
and while you're there, pick up the copy of Marx's book.
Pick it up.
Pick
Please,
up
throw it away.
Pick up the
don't throw it away.
Communist
Put it
Manifesto.
back on the shelf because it does have some good stuff in there. Barkindo was the name of the OPEC guy. And then we do have one more.
This is from Cheeseburger. He says, oh boy, yeah, you should see our fearless leader, Jacinda, speak. She sounds exactly like Trudeau. It's uncanny. Both WEF shills. Yeah, Cheese, I have heard her speak a couple of times, and yeah, I don't have a lot of good things to say about
When he says Jacinda,
Madame
who is he
Jacinda.
talking about? Which country?
New Zealand.
New Zealand. Okay.
Yeah,
Got
and
it.
you know
I'm
what? Here in the States, we were kind of hyper vigilant for what was going on with the lockdowns and everything and the mandates that were going on in Canada. It got a lot of press here, especially with the trucker movement. But anything that happened in Canada pales in comparison to some of the lunacy I saw in New Zealand and Australia. It was really, really bad. And a dangerous precedent has been set. The world is lurching towards authoritarianism. All right. And look, this is a capitalist show. We love free markets here. We love supply and demand and price discovery and knowing what things are actually worth, not what the government tells us they're worth. And the world is just lurching towards authoritarianism. And people who speak out for personal freedom and individual accountability and responsibility are getting fewer in number. Hold the line, folks. That's all I can say.
Hold that line.
Hold that line. Don't let them get away with it, because nothing good has ever happened to any country anywhere in the world that suddenly embraced communism. It has never ended well for anyone. Not one person.
I mean, technically, all world governments have ended.
Yeah. But communism is, that's like saying everybody dies, so maybe
Right.
smallpox isn't that bad. Communism
Exactly.
is the government equivalent of smallpox. Yeah, he was going to die anyway. But communism has a funny way of speeding that up. So-
Okay, you want to do a last run through?
Yeah, let's
We're
take
running
one
an
last
hour.
run through the markets, folks. We are done for the day. We have got the S&P closed down 4 points, not even 0.1%. The Dow closed down 46 points, or 0.15%, and the Nasdaq, begrudgingly, in positive territory. The red-headed step index leading the charge higher, up 14 points today. Commodities were a mixed bag. Some of the key points here: WTI was up $2, back above that $100 level at 104. Gold and silver pretty much flat for the day. Again, these commodities have really been affected by the strong dollar lately. Get used to that one, folks. It's one of the reasons why my estimates for silver are so low going forward. Let's see, what did the grains do
I'm going to
today?
say that too. My estimates are off because of the Dixie.
Yep. Wheat up a little bit, about 6% today. Wheat up a lot today. Corn up 4% today. So unusual movement in the grains, but after the last couple of weeks that the grains have had, this is really small potatoes. So that's where we're at. Look, folks, I want you guys to have an awesome weekend. I am back from vacation now, so the channel is going to be a lot more active than it's been for the last 2 weeks. I appreciate you guys for your patience. I also got to send a big shout out to my Patreon supporters. Thank you guys so much. I didn't get to scheduled the Patreon Zoom meeting this week. Oversight on my part. Again, I just can't take long vacations anymore. We will be back on next Wednesday doing our regularly scheduled Patreon member Zoom meeting. Link in the description down below if you feel so inclined. And Mish, anything you want to add?
We did a lot of talking about this.
We did.
And I think I'm going to say go keep your head on a swivel. It's getting spicy out there.
Head on a swivel. That is an awesome, awesome send-off, Mish. I tell my girls that all the time in parking lots. Head on a swivel, baby girl. Okay, Daddy.
It's getting spicy out there.
It is. All right, folks. Remember, hard times ahead. They are coming, but they're not here yet. So enjoy these days because we don't know how long things will be this good for. So make the most of them. Be ready, be prepared, not scared. And until next time, live small and dream big.
Anyone else?
Oh, hold it for a few more minutes.
Yeah.